Raffensperger and former Fulton County elections worker Ruby Freeman. Joining me now is Barbara McQuaid, former U.S. attorney and law professor at the University of Michigan, and Lisa Rubin, MSNBC legal analyst. Thank you, ladies. Lisa, I do want to start with you because it strikes me that in this last case, the case of this attempt to revoke the bond of this defendant who was involved in the attempt to intimidate Ruby Freeman in the first place, Harrison Floyd. Interesting that he is now looking at having his bond revoked and could wind up in jail. That is not something that Donald Trump has faced, even though he, too, has intimidated witnesses. Did that come up? Did his lawyers bring that up in this case? Because it's interesting that he's doing what Donald Trump is doing, but not facing the same, freedom to move.
So, Joy, this motion was filed after today's hearing, and so I'm not aware that anybody addressed what conduct Donald Trump has engaged in that might, for example, violate his own conditions of release vis-a-vis the other Fulton County defendants and witnesses. That having been said, the Fulton County DA lays out a number of acts over the last 2 weeks in particular, between November 1st and November 14th, where Harrison Floyd, as you noted, has gone after a number of his co-defendants or witnesses, in particular, really attacking Jenna Ellis. And I'm looking at one of the tweets right now, 2 days ago, saying that she was lying on Dan Scavino. And I guess they don't teach ethics at Harvard Law anymore. As an aside, Jenna Ellis did not go to Harvard Law School. But the larger point is that Harrison Floyd has engaged in a 2-week-long campaign to intimidate and fight back against people involved in this case, ranging from Brad Raffensperger and Gabe Sterling, as you noted, to Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell. And then finally, the motion ends with a litany of his tweets aimed squarely at Ruby Freeman, who is the person that he victimized in the first place, leading to the charges against him, and who he continues to victimize and was probably the most offensive conduct that he engaged in, according to DA Fani Willis's team. So I look forward to seeing how this motion is litigated, but this is just the opening salvo that we have here right now, Joy.
Barb, can you comment on this? Because, I mean, the thing is that Donald Trump, the problem with his behavior is that it is infectious, that other people who are MAGA think that they can do what he can do. But he was a former president of the United States. He's not a black guy who was the head of Black Voices for Trump. This guy's already been jailed for his previous conduct that was violent-ish, and he was the one who was in jail, the only one who was actually jailed prior to his plea. He's now attacking the same person he's accused of intimidating, bullying her again, continuing to victimize her. It's a wonder he hasn't already been put back in jail. However, there is a discrepancy between the kind of bullying that he can do. He probably doesn't have 25 million or however many followers that Donald Trump used to have on Twitter, or however many he has on Truth Social. Trump can actually direct a mob at people. This guy can't. But can you just address the discrepancy in the sanctions that both of them face? I mean, it's obvious he's not the former president, so he doesn't have Secret Service, but come on.
Yes. So, in this case, and the Georgia RICO case, there is not currently any sort of gag order like the one that we've seen in the federal election interference case or the one in New York. So that's not what the concern is here. One of his bond conditions is that he not communicate about the case with any of his co-defendants or witnesses. And so I think this conduct directed directly toward Ruby Freeman is particularly problematic with that bond condition. As we just heard from Lisa, she was the direct victim. He tried to intimidate her and coerce her into confessing falsely that she had violated and committed fraud in the election, when, of course, that wasn't true at all. And so that sort of intimidation, it goes to the very heart of this case. So I don't imagine that at the very first instance, the judge's first instinct will be to cancel his bond and put him in jail. But I think it's important that the judge send a message that he takes these conditions very seriously. And so I imagine we will see him in court with at least a warning, and a second violation may land him in jail. And, of course, as you point out, Donald Trump says all kinds of things about people, including about people who might be witnesses or might be co-defendants. And so it seems that it's Fani Willis who's giving him a slightly longer leash. And I imagine part of that is because as a candidate for president in the future, judges are likely to be inclined to give him a little more leeway so that he can respond in the public arena to these charges against him. But I think you raise a good point about treating like people alike. And I think Fani Willis has to be careful not to be seen as holding herself to double standards.
Let's talk about Donald Trump, his team moving for a mistrial. Let me read some of what his proffer is trying to get a